Hi there. How are
Hello?
you? Hi, Jody. Can you hear
Hello?
me? Hi, can you hear me, Jody?
I had a panic moment. I couldn't get in.
Can you hear me?
Julia, would you give me a book so I can sit?
Oh,
A
not
book?
a problem at
Yeah, hello,
all.
how are you? Yes, I'm moving
Good.
around,
So
but I
I
can
just
hear you.
want,
All right.
so we're actually, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I just want to, intro you because we're actually live right now. So I just want to
Oh,
say,
great.
yay! I love your background, by the way. It looks wonderful. So I want to welcome everybody today to our latest edition of BookTrib Live. It's a Merrill Moss Media production, and we're thrilled to be chatting with Jodi Thomas today, the Queen of Texas Romance. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us again, Jodi. And we're going to be talking about her latest Ransom Canyon title, Lone Heart Pass, which introduces us to the characters Jubilee Hamilton and Charlie Collins. So Jodi, can you bring us up to speed on what's happening in Ransom Canyon these days? What is new in this town with all these great characters?
Well, this is the third book, and
Mhm.
I'm working on it. And I wanted to do characters that don't have a clue how to be in a relationship. And I take a woman who is totally absorbed with her career, and I take a man who's, bless his heart, he's good looking, and it's sort of the curse of his life. Um, and he's really down on his luck. And together they get together and make an agreement.
That
It's
sounds
really
like
fun.
pretty funny. It could be grounds for some pretty funny interactions. Was that your plan
I
when you were
think
writing it?
yes, I've never laughed as much as when I read this book.
That's great. Um,
A lot of fun.
Now, is Ransom Canyon based on a real place? For anyone who hasn't read your books previous to this, is this a real place based on a real place in Texas?
Actually, Ransom Canyon is a canyon in Texas,
Hmm.
but the community that I have made up of Crossroads that's next to Ransom Canyon. So all the people are fictional, and the place, but the actual Ransom Canyon is a place.
Wonderful. Um, and do you spend a lot of time there? Have you like kind of gone there to explore and get ideas?
Well, it's about 100 miles from where I live,
Oh wow.
but it's only about 10 miles from where I went to college at Texas Tech
Oh, neat.
University. And sometimes on the tech campus, it'd be a hard day, and I'd drive out to Ransom Canyon and just drive through the canyon.
That's awesome.
So
Now,
I've loved the canyon for years.
yeah, that's amazing. And you've brought it into your tales, which is so exciting. Now, you spin quite a yarn. You're a great storyteller. Do you come from a family of storytellers? Is it kind of in your blood?
It is. I often say I come from a long line of liars, but my family likes my family likes to talk in stories, and I have one uncle that when he tells a story, it's hard to believe. He tells it so completely, then after he finishes, you realize you were there and you don't remember any of it
Huh.
because he always elaborates so much, and it's fun.
Yeah. Don't we all have a
And I
family
grew
member
up.
like that? Um, so speaking of just storytelling and family and all of that, what's one of your favorite Texas legends? Is there any tall tale out there that you've kind of incorporated into a story that you really love?
I think all of my stories
Hmm.
are stories there's a little bit of a story that I love to tell. And about the canyon, I grew up hiking around Caladura Canyon,
Hmm.
and some of the legends that are in Ransom Canyon were also in Caladura Canyon
Hmm.
about the horses jumping off the walls and screaming on the way down.
Hmm.
Still hear it 100 years later,
Wow.
and about there being drawings on some of the caves inside thousands of years old. Those exist, and so I think that adds to it.
Absolutely. Now, the title Lone Heart Pass, I love that name. How did you come up with it? Is that also something that exists, or was this from your imagination?
No, I just made it. In fact, I'm making up the names of the ranches, and sometimes
I
it's
love
hard not to put a real ranch in
it. Yeah.
there. But Lone Heart Pass, I remember being in a canyon. I think it was Caprock Canyon, which is not far from here,
Mhm.
and there was a pass through into the canyon, and I thought that would Lone Heart Pass just seemed to be the right name.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love it. Now, how long does it typically take you to write one of your books on average?
It takes me about 6 months, and I'm writing three this year, and I don't know how I'm doing it. But I think the longest thing takes is thinking of it. I do sometimes 2 or 3 months of thinking about the characters, where I'm going to put them in the story, and then and mapping out their characteristics and their personality, and even writing down things they say. And then there are characters that just jump in my mind, and they're fully blown. And Thatcher, who's the little boy in this book,
Mhm.
was one of those characters.
Mhm.
I was out at a friend of mine's ranch one day, and this little boy, he was about 12 or 14 years old, came bumping along the dirt road in his pickup, and he was collecting rattlesnakes. And I
Oh,
thought,
how
what an
cute.
interesting.
That's great.
Sometimes characters just they're real.
Absolutely. How real do they get for you? Is it ever like can't get them out of your head? I'm sure they follow you everywhere you go.
Yes, they do, and they talk to me, and sometimes argue with me. And I think an example of how real they get is one time I was in my study late at night, probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and I started laughing, and I woke my husband up, and he came in and said, "What are you laughing at? I can hear you all the way down the hall." And I said, I'm laughing because one of my characters told me a joke I hadn't heard. So sometimes
And he's
characters can
like,
get pretty
okay.
real, and they have a voice of their own.
That's amazing. Can you describe your writer's space to us? Do you have a special place that sit down to work?
I do. Right now, you are in my office, and this is on the university. And I have interns in here who are going to be great writers someday, maybe. And one of them just wrote Jodi Thomas on the wall behind my bookshelf the other day.
It looks
But
beautiful.
she did pretty good, didn't she?
Yeah.
And but the my workspace at home, we have behind our house. It's a mission home, kind of, and behind it is a extra little room and bath out there, and we call it the bunkhouse.
Oh,
And
nice.
I actually do most of the creating in the bunkhouse,
Hmm.
and the walls are covered with whiteboards,
Hmm.
and so it's like my characters meet. I have to talk with my hands, so it's hard. But on one wall, I'll have the characters. On one wall, I'll have the plot line. On another wall, I'll have facts about the story that I have to get done. You put them all together, and
Hmm.
it's kind of like I'm stepping into the series when I step in. And it's getting more
Yeah.
and more crowded because now I've got close to 50 characters I'm dealing with.
Hmm.
They can show
Oh,
up
that's so interesting.
anytime in any of the books.
Yeah. Is there any character that you've brought back from a book into new books that just keeps talking and doesn't leave?
Yes, and I hadn't planned on Yancey being in all the books, but it looks like he's going to be. And he was the guy who got out of prison and just dropped off there. I had planned him just being in
Hmm.
one book, but he seems to be showing up in every book, so that's good. And the sheriff will be in every book, and so I have certain characters that are
Hmm.
they're just part of the
They
town.
just
I want
Yeah.
people to feel like that they're walking into Crossroads and it's a real place.
Hmm.
And uh, I'm going to tell a story that's going to have a beginning, middle, and an end, but there's going to be characters whose stories are continuing through each book.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
fun.
I love that. Yeah, very interesting. And you're a fifth generation Texan, correct? So can you tell us a bit about your lineage? I know your grandmother was born in a covered wagon, I think, that's an amazing. thing
Right.
to, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
Sure. I always think Texas has lots of history, and I just got back from Paris, and everything
Oh,
there is 1,000 years old, and everything here is relatively
wow.
new. But
Yeah.
my family was one of those families that came after the Civil War during that
Hmm.
time, and that was a real violent time in Texas. Almost half the people
Yeah.
died the 10 years after the Civil War. It was a tough time.
Hmm.
Cattle drives were started, and my family was part of that. We farmed and ranched, and I had one grandmother who was born in a covered wagon down by Quanah, what's now Quanah, Texas, and her mother died in the childbirth, and she was actually given to her aunt and uncle, and they went into the Indian Territory in Oklahoma, which was Oklahoma, and
Hmm.
she grew up there for a few years and then came back and married in Texas.
Oh, wow.
But the family stories sometimes they're very Western, and I have a set of grandparents that met at a barn raising. She was too young; she was only 15, so they wrote letters for a year. A year later, when she turned 16, he came and got her. He'd only seen her the one day at the barn raising, and then through letters, and they got
Oh,
married. So
that's
I guess it
adorable.
worked because they were married like 70 years.
Oh,
But
wow.
I
Mm.
love the way people think, this Western way they think, in the way that they say things sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's just I I think it's hard to fake knowing about Texas.
Oh, definitely.
Sometimes it's hard to
Yeah.
understand Texans too.
Yeah, that was one of my questions actually. Like, what's the real Texas if someone's never been to Texas? Like, what's the real Texas and what's the Texas that people like imagine? There's so many preconceived notions. So I'm sure you know the
Well,
real Texas.
it kind of bothers me whenever they think about Texas as, some guy in tight jeans, and, it's a lot more than that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
well, I'll give you an example of a real cowboy. I was out at
Hmm.
a ranch last year doing research, and they were bringing cattle in, and I watched about 30 cowboys saddle up at 6 o'clock in the morning, bring the cattle in for, for miles, and
Hmm.
then were branding, and they do all of it at once. They brand, they vaccinate,
Yeah.
they castrate, they do it all at once. And I've been watching them all morning. Finally, about 12:30, the dinner bell rang, and they headed to the bunkhouse. And I was late because I was talking to someone, which is not surprising, but I was late. And when I walked in the bunkhouse, 30 men were standing. And I said, "You guys need to eat. I mean, I know you've been in the saddle since 6 o'clock. You've got to be starving." And one cowboy said, "No, ma'am, we're waiting for you." And that's
Oh
that's
wow.
kind of how I think of a cowboy. They have a
Hmm.
way of life. They have a value system that sometimes in books they don't show, and it's
Yeah.
it's there.
They don't
So a
portray
little
it.
wild and crazy too, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's a great story.
it's definitely a way of life.
Hmm. They almost live by a code, I guess you could say. Very cool. Now, you mentioned that Thatcher came from seeing that little boy, um, you
Yes.
know, collecting rattlesnakes. Are Jubilee and Charlie based in part on people that you've come across or people that you know, or are they kind of new?
They're new, and I usually don't write heroes that are real good looking. And I think Charlie is, it's always got him in trouble,
Mhm.
and he wants to go out, he wants to straighten up, and I so when I wrote him, I was thinking about how I guess beauty could be a curse. And for Jubilee, I see a lot of people who become very career focused, and then
Mhm.
when their career doesn't work out the way they liked or thought it would,
Mhm.
then they get very frustrated. that was Jubilee's beginning of Jubilee.
Hmm.
But I wanted her to have a lot of skills that she didn't realize could apply to any part of life.
Hmm. Yeah.
She was fun to write because um, at first she's very much a city girl, and then she
Yeah.
gets used to being on a ranch.
Yeah, absolutely. I love her name too. Perfect. Now, there's a murder investigation that one of the characters is embroiled in. So, have you written murder in like the kind of murder mystery or anything like that in your other books? Did you have to do like kind of any research? I know a lot of authors like to visit FBI, stations, or have you ever done anything like that?
No, but I have friends who are policemen and lawyers, and I talk to them
Yeah.
a great deal.
Hmm.
I have a list of people that I can call or text in
That's neat.
late at night and say, "Tell me, is this possible? Has this ever happened?" And they can answer questions, and those
Hmm.
people are very valuable.
Yeah.
A writer doesn't have to know everything, but we have to get it right what we write,
Hmm.
and so that's what
Exactly.
I'm looking.
You have like
I
fact checkers on speed dial. I like that. That's great.
Yes. Of course, the internet helps a great deal now
Oh yeah,
because you can
always.
see a picture of anything immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So true. Um, how do you find the like perfect balance of romance and kind of the drama of the murder mystery while you're writing? Is that difficult to kind of balance the two so you have enough of both?
Right. I think what I'm trying to write in a story is life. And
Hmm.
life is never as simple as one man, one woman, one love story. It
Right.
gets, it gets messy. It's
It
complicated,
does.
And I want to
Yeah.
write that. And I think putting a mystery in every book, whether it's a small mystery or a big one, putting the mystery adds that to it. It
Yeah.
also brings people together that maybe wouldn't normally be put together. And so
Hmm.
I always like a mystery. I like a book that people crawl into and feel like they're living
Yeah.
the story with the
Hmm.
characters.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
fact, I don't call my people characters. I call them people,
Yeah.
even though they're
Yeah.
very, very real to me.
Yeah, it's interesting to see just like the town develop and everything over these last couple of books. Very cool. Now, out of all of your books, which one would you like to see turn into a movie? Is there one that you'd really like to see on the screen?
Now I think this book would make a great comedy. So if you know
Yeah,
a producer, let me know.
great
But I think
rom-com.
this
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be great. But I think of all the books that I'd like to see as a movie, it would be The Widows of Wichita County. And that was a
Hmm.
story about the oil business and five women who um, survive a crisis and grow from it. And I think it'd make a great book.
Hmm.
But I think Ransom Canyon would make a great series.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even TV. TV is so great lately. If it was like a Hallmark Channel show, I would love to see that. It would be great.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe in the
It,
future, you never know. You never know. What are some of the must-sees of the Lone Star State if no one's been there? If you could take somebody around for a couple days, what would you show them in Texas?
Well, the thing about Texas is it's a lot of land. It's a
Yes.
lot to see. So there's the hill country that right now is going crazy with bluebonnets that's gorgeous, and there's the
Hmm.
coast, and there's Austin that's got a lot of character. But if I could
Yeah.
take you to my Texas, I'd bring you up here all the way to the Panhandle, the very top
Yep.
square of Texas. And there I'd show you Paladura Canyon. It'll take your
Hmm.
breath away. It's so beautiful. And
Hmm.
I've been in Paladura Canyon when it was snowing and the snow would drop down to ground level and then it would fall 1,000 feet into the canyon as rain. You were watching
Wow.
snow turn into rain.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful canyon, and
Hmm.
you can't even see it's there. people ride up on the canyon and don't, because it goes down, it doesn't go up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's caves and water crossings and all kinds of stuff. So that would be
Yeah.
one thing I'd take you to. Probably a rodeo too. I've grown up going to
Yeah.
rodeos, and I think I'd take you to a rodeo. You'd be surprised. You might like it.
Yeah.
So
That's
those are
amazing.
a couple of things that I think.
And I'm sure the canyon is quiet out there. It's like almost so quiet it's loud. I always think that of like a big canyon where you're in there. It's just like so vast. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned that you just came back from Paris, which is fantastic. It's one of my favorite cities ever. Do you travel for ideas when you're writing a book? Do you ever say, hey, maybe I need inspiration, and you kind of take off somewhere for a little bit? Does that kind of jog your creative juices?
I say I walk the land. I
Yeah.
travel and I'll think about things a lot. And whenever I'm traveling like on a plane or something, I'm always telling myself a story.
Hmm.
So sometimes that story actually becomes part of a book. But
Hmm.
um, whenever I'm thinking of a story or a character, I like to just get out and walk. And I like to walk where you can't see civilization, where it looks exactly like it did 200 years ago when my families came. And
Yeah.
I like to walk the land.
Hmm.
And I had an experience recently. I went out to a ranch where they take care of abused and abandoned horses. They're half starved and in need of a lot of medical care.
Hmm.
And what happens is the horse forgets how to be a horse when they're tied up or
Mm.
left in a barn or they're in a little pen. And they let the horses roam with the herd and learn how to be a horse again.
Oh,
And the
wow.
lady said, we were down in a bowl of a canyon, kind of a short canyon, and there wasn't any fences because the canyon made the walls.
Hmm.
And she had a herd of horses many of them had been abused.
Hmm.
And she said, at night, when I want to calm down, I walk with the herd. And
Huh.
she said, would you like to try?
Oh,
And
wow.
I jumped at the chance, and we crawled between the gate and stepped out, and very slowly moved to the herd. I didn't realize what an experience that would be. It was my heart slowed, and you're dealing with these big animals who could very easily hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not aggressive, they just let you move with
Hmm.
them. It was very interesting.
Sounds
And
magical.
I wouldn't recommend it for someone who didn't know something about horses,
Yeah.
but
You're a little
uh,
jittery around
it
them. You
was
might
on.
not.
Yeah, but it was a neat experience, and I'm sure it will be in the book I'm working on.
Oh, that's so
I'm
amazing. I
sure.
love that. Um, what was the hardest scene for you to write in Lone Heart Pass? Was there anything that you found really difficult that you had to go back over? I'm sure everybody has.
I that's a hard question. I think it was when the sheriff was hurt.
Hmm.
I think that was the hardest part for me to
Yeah.
write. I I really liked him. I like him. He didn't die, so I liked him. But I hate hurting my people, and uh,
Hmm.
but the scene needed to be there, and everyone grew from the experience, and so
Yeah.
that was hard to write that.
Hmm. Now, did you
I think of
start?
everybody as sweet and nice.
Yeah. It's like you're hurting your friend on purpose or something. Uh,
Right, right.
yeah, I understand. Did you start out writing romance, or were there other genres that you explored before romance? What was kind of your start with writing?
Um, the very beginning, I think I was reading a book a day, and my
Wow.
background's in counseling, and I saw so many times that the people did not uh, they didn't make sense. That
Yeah.
kind of person wouldn't do that kind of thing, and I just wanted to write a book that where it was about like the people who fall in love really fall in love. They don't just, fall in lust for the night. They fall in love. And
Hmm.
I wanted to write a story, and I wanted to blend history and the community and the way of life around it too.
Hmm.
And I started thinking it would be easy. 2 years later, I decided it was a little harder than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I've learned a lot of tricks and skills in writing,
Hmm.
but the story, it's still, what's that old saying that to be a writer, all you have to do is open a vein and bleed? Well, sometimes at night
Yeah.
when it's going, I feel like I'm exhausted.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's cathartic, but it's also definitely emotionally draining for sure. You're putting everything out there. Um,
Right.
Speaking of just, writers and how they function, who are some of your favorite authors out there that really inspire you?
I think not only because I love her books, but for also a work ethic. I think Debbie Macomber does.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Robin Carr does. And I
Hmm.
said I never tell people who's my favorite author because within 3 days I've got a new one. So it
Yeah, you're always
changes all the
discovering.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, always discovering new stuff.
I, there's nothing like discovering a new, finding a new author and then finding out they have a dozen books. And I
Yeah.
love that. And I love it when I hear people say, I found you today and I didn't even know you existed because I
Yeah.
know they're going to read all of my books.
Hmm. Yeah, that's exciting. Um, Now, how about some great advice that you've received from a fellow writer? Have you ever received any, or anyone in general, just great writing advice?
Um, I, I think one of the best things that it took me a while to learn, but my brother told me was that creativity is not a bucket. You're not going to run out. It's
Yeah.
like a river that keeps flowing.
Hmm.
And the more you write, the more you do anything creative, the stronger you become.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times people write their first book and they think they have to sell it because that's them, that's their creativity, and they don't realize that the next one will be better, and the next one will be better, and just keep
Hmm.
going. And
Yeah.
in my life, every book I write, I want to be better than the last
Hmm. Yeah, there's always more to be untapped. Absolutely. Um, so when you're not working on novels, I know you're very busy. What are some of your favorite things to do when you're not writing? I know
one. Well,
traveling.
I never write in the morning. I'm brain dead in the morning.
Me too.
I so
Yep.
so I come up to my office almost every morning, and I have students who wander in. This is a university, and they find me, and they usually come in and ask a few questions, and then a couple weeks later they come
Hmm.
in again, and then they come in with work, and we begin. I know that we're going to begin, and after they
Yeah.
learn they need to learn then about writing, and I have them read about a dozen books. Then they join a critique group. So
Hmm.
the funnest thing I do in the morning is like I have a critique group of all people writing high fantasy, which I know nothing about. I have a critique group of vampires. I have a critique.
That's
Last year
great.
I had a critique of zombies. I hated that. But they come in and they read to me, and we talk about their work and how to polish and how to make it better. And
Hmm.
that, I guess, if you had a hobby, that's my hobby. I like to help writers grow as writers.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the zombie thing is popular, huh? It's like everybody wants to do zombie stuff. I think they need to move on to a new
Oh,
paranormal creature. They need to stop the zombie stuff. So, what events
oh,
do you
I
have coming
know.
up to celebrate the release of Lone Heart Pass? What do you have coming up in the next few weeks to, celebrate this?
Well, because Ransom Canyon is right outside Lubbock,
Yeah.
next weekend I'll be in Lubbock, and I'll be signing in Lubbock and doing some TV in Lubbock. And
Hmm.
then 2 weeks after that, I'll be at BEA
Wonderful.
in Chicago.
Yep.
And that'll be fun. I
Yeah.
hope anybody around can come to that. And
Hmm.
the summer, I'm going to some writers' conferences, and I've been doing a lot of book festivals,
Yeah.
and they're fun. I just finished one in Florida,
Hmm.
and I'm doing one in Las Vegas in the
Oh,
fall,
fun.
so that'll.
Nice. And what are you working on next before we wrap up? We want to hear like what's coming down the pipeline for you.
I just finished the copy edits on one that's called Sunrise Crossing. I can lean over and show you
Oh,
the
nice.
working copy right here. The, it'll be out in the fall, and I finished the copy edits on it, so it's ready to go. But and I'm starting the
Exciting.
next one. I always love it when I start because we're meeting and we're getting to know each other, and I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And it'll be book 5 of the series. And it'll, of
Wow.
course, background characters will still be there, but it'll be new people coming in.
Hmm. Always new characters to come in and start a new, fresh take on Ransom Canyon. And I just want to thank you again for joining us. It's been a great time, Jodi. And thank you everybody for
Oh,
viewing. Yeah, thank you. It's been so fun. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Jodi.
thank you. I enjoyed it. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.